And joining me now is Senator Michael Bennet, Democrat from Colorado, who temporarily delayed last week's stopgap funding bill after aid to Ukraine was omitted from that legislation. Senator, what's your reaction to what happened yesterday in the House? You know, President Biden, we just heard, he says he's worried about Ukraine aid given the disarray. How much harder did it just become to get Congress to appropriate more money?
It just became a billion times harder, but we can't fail. And the reason I held things up over the weekend was I was deeply worried that this was where we were gonna be. And in the end, we were able to get a commitment from McConnell and Chuck Schumer that they were going to work together to fund Ukraine aid. Obviously, there was nothing I could do about McCarthy, and now we've got people running for Speaker of the House that are saying they're not going to fund a single dollar of Ukraine aid. How these people could be for, 20 more years of war in Afghanistan and not fund, the Ukrainian people at this moment when democracy truly is on the line, I don't understand. And I hope over the next 45 days, we're going to be able to get to a place where broad bipartisan votes are happening in both the Senate and the House to fund Ukraine.
And Senator, I know you're in the Senate, but Chuck Schumer just warned that whoever the next speaker is about coddling the hard right. So how concerned are you that the next speaker will be so much more difficult to work with?
I think that it would be a disaster if the next speaker uses McCarthy's playbook. It is so obvious to everybody who's looking at this that he sowed the seeds of his own destruction when he made the deals that he did with the hard right part of his caucus, going back to those 15 votes when he couldn't even get the votes to become speaker. And then he would go up to the well and get make one more concession and one more concession after that and one more concession after that. We now know, but unfortunately, this isn't a tragedy just for Speaker McCarthy. It's a tragedy for the American people because we need a functional government. The world needs a functional government. And I think whoever is elected speaker next, I hope they promise the American people they're going to govern by bringing the parties together rather than making empty promises to their right flank, which they're not going to be able to keep.
And Senator, I want to ask you a tactical question here. Democrats in the House were all united in ousting McCarthy. But was that the right move? Should they have tried to get concessions out of him before that vote?
I'm not going to second guess that. I do think that it is really important when you think about things like funding for Ukraine that this can't be done just with a hope or a prayer. You have to make sure that we have commitments that are actually worth something. And I tried to do that in the Senate. We're going to have to try to figure out how to do that in the House. As I said earlier, we can't fail. This decision is beyond politics. Zelensky was here. He told us if we don't fund them, they're going to lose this war. The Russians are about to start a counteroffensive. And after all of the successes that the Ukrainians have had over the last 18 months, eclipsing what anybody would have ever predicted about how Putin's army would have been exposed for its weakness, the way the NATO would come together, the questions Xi Jinping would now have about what he's going to do with Taiwan. With all of that facing us, the idea that we would walk away is, I think, unacceptable, obviously, would be an abdication of American leadership, unlike anything we've seen for generations.
Senator, one idea that's been floated by some members of the House is a possibility of a discharge position to force a vote on more aid for Ukraine. Is that a viable strategy?
I don't know. I honestly, if I tried to become a House parliamentarian, I'd sound like all the people that become economists around here when the Fed raises interest rates by a quarter point or cuts them by a quarter point. I just don't know. I know that we've got to find a way to get people on record sooner rather than later that they're going to support Ukraine aid, and also that they're going to be out talking to the American people, including the President of the United States, including the President from the Oval Office, about why this is so important and why it's in the national security interest of the United States to do it.
On that point, Senator, a top NATO official said today that Ukraine is, quote, nearing the bottom of the barrel when it comes to ammunition. What are you hearing? How much time is there until Ukraine runs out of the munitions it needs?
I think that we have the time for Congress to act in a responsible way, and we need to act in a responsible way because of that Russian counteroffensive that I was mentioning earlier. So time is of the essence. I think that if we get our act together over the next 45 days, we'll be able to do what's necessary. But that's a big if, and we got to put our political, instincts aside and do the right thing for the country and the right thing for the world. That's what this moment calls for.
And Senator, you temporarily held up the Senate because of the CR, because the CR didn't include money for Ukraine. We just talked about that. But would you force a shutdown if it is not included in the government funding bill?
I hope it doesn't come to that. I don't want it to come to that. But, I think my mom was born in Warsaw, Poland in 1938, which is about the worst place on planet Earth that, a Polish Jew could have been born, which is who she was and when she was born. She's lived long enough to see another land war in Europe. And if that's what's going to be necessary to make sure that we get people's attention on this and we do what only the United States can do, I hope it doesn't come to that. But if it does, I certainly will be willing to shut the government down over this issue.
So that's a yes, Senator. You said I hope it doesn't come to that, but you would be willing to shut down the government.
I hope it doesn't come to that. I think the stakes are high enough that may be, if that's what's required, we'll have to do what's required.
Well, that's significant, Senator. And I want to now move on to just a big picture question. All this dysfunction in the Hill in recent weeks, what message does that send to our adversaries who argue that democracy does not work?
I think it sends a terrible message, And the message I would send back is we until our own dysfunction was getting in the way, things were actually starting to look pretty good. Putin had made terrible miscalculations about the strength of his army, about the resilience and bravery of the Ukrainian people, about the way democracies all over the world would come together with the U.S.'s leadership to fight this war. Xi Jinping is having to think twice and three times about what he would do in Taiwan because of the way that we've come together. And before this craziness started right now, we had passed the first bipartisan infrastructure bill since Eisenhower was president. We'd passed the first bill since Reagan was president to bring an industry back here instead of exporting everything to China and Southeast Asia. And we'd passed the most significant climate bill of any country in the world, and on top of that, finally overcome pharma to require Medicare to negotiate drug prices in front of on behalf of the American people. That is not nothing. And for those of us that believe in democracy, and I certainly do, this is a moment where we should be encouraging our elected officials to move beyond this dysfunction, to build on the significant successes that we've had legislatively over the last couple of years, build on the significant successes that the Ukrainian people have had, and turn something over to our kids and our grandkids we can actually be proud of.
Senator Michael Bennet giving us a preview of the high stakes and the showdown on Capitol Hill over the coming weeks, especially over Ukraine funding. Senator Michael Bennet, thanks so much for your time.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.